points in it. And in each of the lines that follows, you're making each individual colored set of points appear on the plot based on the different levels in the legend, which is the final line of plot. And this is kind of that layering I was talking about, and that Tim will talk a little bit more about in ggplot, where you can build layers on these plots and eventually get up to some really complex stuff.
Okay, so plotting with ggplot is, as Katie mentioned, kind of the other option that most people use for plotting. It's going to be base or ggplot pretty much wherever you go. But as Katie also mentioned, the syntax of ggplot is quite different to base. So typically people prefer one or the other. As you heard, Katie prefers base. I prefer ggplot. They do have their applications where one is sometimes easier to use than the other. There's a few small situations for that. But similar to base, ggplot is built in layers. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Layers can be anything from your data points to your entries, your axis labels, titles. If you want to put any sort of text on plots, you can do that as well. And then the customization of those layers can change everything from the fill color, outline color, change dash lines, whatever you want. That's the nice thing about R versus something like Excel, which is exclusively a GUI. Even RStudio does still use command line, like we mentioned, so you can put a lot more customization into your plots than you can with Excel. ggplot can be used to create just about any of the plots that can be made in base. As I mentioned, some do have their better applications. One example is going to be a simple histogram. I'm always going to tell you it's going to be easier in base. One line, one variable. It's much easier than putting together the layers in ggplot. ggplot also has its applications that I think are much better than base. Basically all of my plotting I do in ggplot now, but it also has a lot of extensions, which is nice because it's all community-based, as we mentioned before with R. ggplot is obviously its own package. People are putting extensions into ggplot, but there are also additional packages that work alongside ggplot, ggarrange, gg things of that nature for even further customization of your plots, which is nice. So now we're going to go ahead and look at the syntax of ggplot, which, as I mentioned, is built in layers. Going to hear that a lot. So our first line here, we're going to just go line by line and literally break down a simple plot that we're actually going to make later. So the first line is always going to include our aesthetics. Really all this is the data that we want to plot. We're pointing R and telling it we want to plot this X and this Y, or perhaps just this one variable. And then we've also got our grouping variable there, which is class. So we've only told it about the data that we want it to look at. And then the next line, geom_point, is going to tell ggplot what kind of plot we actually want to make. In this case, it's a dot plot, or what'll turn into a scatter plot. And then those following lines are the customization layers that I also mentioned. In this case, it's an X label, a Y label, and just a title. There are many more customization layers that you can add on to it. You can customize your legend and basically anything else you want. And then the final line there is what's called a theme. We're only going to look at this briefly, but a theme is basically a group of customizations that's pre-made by someone else someone else who has developed this theme for ggplot. And so in this case, this is just a black and white theme, where basically your background will be white, all the lines on the plot are going to be black. Simple, clean. I like to use this one. You can also build your own theme with many, many levels of customization that you can then use over and over again, which is nice as well. But that takes a little bit more time.
Really fast, why does it say MPG at right after the parenthesis, the first line?
Yeah, so that is directing R to the data object to reference. So MPG is going to be our, think of it as the Excel file, or basically a table of data. And then the aesthetics here are our X and our Y. So displacement there is one column in our MPG data object. Highway fuel efficiency in this case is another column in that same data object. We're gonna step through all the individual syntax of these as well in the script that we've sent you guys. We can manipulate each of these just to see what they do as well. So we'll go over that in a little bit more detail. But just to show you how ggplot builds in layers, we'll take a look at the next slide. So as I mentioned, our first line is always going to just tell ggplot what data to look at. We haven't told it anything about what kind of plot we want to make. So we've just got a coordinate plane that will fit the data that we've given it. Our next line is going to be the geom. And so again, we're going to look at geom point, which is going to make a scatter plot. So our first layer was our coordinate plane. Now we add on our data. The next couple lines are going to be some more custom, or actually, I'm sorry, this is going to be another geom. So this is geom smooth. This is like in Excel if you wanted to add a regression line to your data. So it's just another way to visualize your data. In this case, it's just a linear regression line. So the method there equals LM is telling R that we want a linear regression line to represent our data. And that goes right on top of our data points in another layer. So these next two lines are going to be our axis limits. So we have basically shrunk our X and Y axis to focus on the data points that we want to look at more closely here. So this is one customization layer. We can expand or contract our X and Y axes. Next up, we're going to add all of our titles. So our axis titles and our plot title. These again go right on top of the old titles and replace, the area and pop total titles that we had there before. So we can put in our own text there for the axis titles as well as the plot title and the subtitle. And then finally we can, we're not going to add a theme to this one. Anyway, like I said, you're going to be building these in layers. In case you forget, well, now you can't forget. So some of our final thoughts on this. Basically, what we've mentioned is R is community-based, so there's a lot of resources out there that are going to help you get through any errors that you're going to encounter, or really any customization that you want to do on a plot. Just Google it. Someone else has done it before, or someone else has had this issue before. Someone else has an answer to your problem. And one of our favorite quotes, you don't get better at coding, you get better at Googling. So you'll figure out how to find your problems online. Another good tip along those lines is copying and pasting code is fine. Tons of people have put examples of how to do specific customizations, how to make specific plots, how to make maps. Copying and pasting code is not against the rules or anything. It's up on the internet. It's not proprietary. It's not copyrighted. You can literally copy someone else's code, change, say in ggplot, the aesthetics to match your data, and make the exact same plot with your data. That's pretty common to do. I've done it. I'm sure Katie's done it and Steph. So you can always find resources online for that as well. One big one that we've mentioned a few times, there's multiple ways to do plotting, coding, R, file organization. Find what works for you. And talk to other people about what works for them and try new things. The first thing that you try isn't always going to be the best one. Maybe you have to change your file organization. It's going to be a pain in the ass down the road, but if it's going to help you in the long run, go for it. Again, Googling your error messages, simple, same as the first bullet point there. Someone else has done it. Someone else has had this problem. Or post to the forums. We're going to show you guys in a little bit just a couple of the websites that are good. Someone can help you answer questions because R is community, which is nice. Finally, be precise with your syntax. R is sensitive to anything you type, commas, quotes, capitalization. It's obviously case sensitive. It's very easy to put an extra comma in there and then you spend the next 10 minutes looking for it. Having a fresh set of eyes look at your code to find those little errors can also be helpful. But yeah, one small typo can change the entire meaning of a line of code. Because like I said before, we hate computers because they do exactly what we tell them to do. And so one small typo can break your entire code. And so, as I mentioned before, those resources, if you Google any of your error messages or pretty much any problem in R, you'll probably pop up with a few Stack Overflow and R Blogger hits. And those are great. Basically, people post their questions and then anyone else can answer it. And so you can find answer to other people's questions that are related to yours, or you can post your own questions there and get answers to them. Also, there are a lot of cheat sheets online. Obviously, the ggplot cheat sheet is one that we can use today if we want. There's a lot of other packages that have these same cheat sheets that basically give you an outline of the syntax necessary to use a lot of the functions. So that's helpful to have on hand. Another thing similar to that is the package manuals and vignettes. So the manuals are basically going to be a long PDF that lists all the functions and the different options within each of those functions and kind of the syntax of how to use them. They can sometimes be pretty dry and not have a lot of examples that would be helpful. So that's why I would actually recommend using the vignettes. These vignettes are just short walkthroughs of specific functions or sometimes whole packages that people have created and put online. And you can literally step through. They're typically done with sample data sets that R has already in it. So you can just step through those pretty quickly. And a lot of those are available online. They're nice to look at. And finally, peers, faculty, staff, blah, blah, blah. Your stats professor, pretty much all the professors are at least somewhat familiar with R, as well as obviously all of your fellow students are struggling along with the same thing, and they're probably all creating the same plots because they have the same homework. So make sure to talk to other people and figure out how to do things. And so I think with that, we can take any questions. I guess just a quick note, obviously specific syntax or questions about the specific plots that we showed you guys, we will be stepping through the sample script in a little bit. So we'll get more into that, but any questions on on the slides we showed you guys?
So you talked about doing a ggplot. That's all in R though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So ggplot is a package that operates within R.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm going to drop the script in the chats. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask them right now, but I'm just gonna get that ready for you guys and you'll be able to download it.
I'm going to start setting up breakout rooms.
Okay, so the file is in the chat now if you guys want to go ahead and download that.
I will say, while Tim's setting up the breakout rooms and you guys are downloading things, R has a really steep learning curve, so don't be discouraged if you can't get it right away. I've been coding in R for, gosh, like 6 years on and off. Like I started in undergrad, like I took a class in it and then took a little bit of time, like used it sporadically. I didn't really start using it until I did my own REU and then went to grad school, like full time using R like every day. But it's a steep learning curve. Like I really didn't get good until you spent a lot of time working in R. And like Tim said, you don't get better at R, you get better at Googling your errors and knowing like what sources to go to and where the reputable sources are and how to get that information off the internet. So it's hard. I remember when I first started learning, like my whole class was like hounding our TA during a seminar, being like, how do we do this? It's hard, but you can get through it.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll go ahead and open up the breakout rooms. And I've set it up just so we can come back here whenever we're done, or if once you guys are done with the script, you can sign off. So